Late one August evening, Nurse Amara Okafor walked briskly toward her car after a double shift at Mercy General Hospital, the August heat still clinging to her scrubs. As she reached the staff parking lot, her phone buzzed with an urgent alert from dispatch. Officer down, shots fired at 23rd and Elm, 4th Precinct asking for medical assistance. Dropping her keys, Amara sprinted back to the ER bay and grabbed her trauma kit, knowing every second counted. 8 minutes later, she and paramedic partner, Luis Rivera, slid out of the ambulance into a cordoned police perimeter. Yellow tape flapped in the humid breeze, and patrol cars formed a makeshift barricade. Within that circle, 2 uniformed officers hunched over a wounded colleague, Officer Harris, bleeding from a gunshot grazed to his thigh. Blood soaked through the Kevlar. Smoke from spent casings drifted up from the curbside pavement. Amara knelt beside Harris, dipping gloved fingers into her kit. "Breathe for me, officer. I need you awake," she instructed softly as she applied pressure above the wound. Harris's hand twitched on the concrete. Amara glanced up at the lead sergeant, expecting permission to treat. Instead, the sergeant's jaw tightened. "Stand back, ma'am," he barked, voice echoing off nearby brick walls. "We have this under control." Amara froze, pulse hammering. "Sir, he's losing blood fast. If I don't—" "I said stand back." The sergeant's hand rested on his holstered taser, as if reminding her of her place. Across the street, Luis shouted, "Amara, he's in shock!" But Amara's gloved hands hovered, the tourniquet in her grip suddenly weightless. Around her, rookie officers looked away. No one stepped forward to insist on medical protocol. The sergeant barked into his radio, "EMS, stand down until MD arrives." A roar of anger welled in Amara's chest. 10 years of nursing, thousands of trauma calls, and now a man's life hung in the balance while a uniformed chain of command overrode emergency care. She locked eyes with Officer Harris, whose breath rattled like dying wind chimes. Then, without hesitating, Amara snapped the tourniquet tight, pressed gauze into the wound, and injected a dose of fentanyl into his IV line she'd spotted leaning against the ambulance. A murmur rose from the onlookers as Officer Harris's breathing steadied. The lead sergeant shouted, "I'm ordering you to stop!" Amara met his glare, voice firm. "He's my patient now." She radioed the ER. "We're coming in hot with a priority one. Bleeding control already applied." As Luis helped lift Harris onto the gurney, Amara stood between the sergeant and his commands, her presence a shield for the wounded officer. Sirens wailed as they raced back, leaving the stunned 4th Precinct behind. In the ambulance, Amara's hands moved with calm precision, dressing the wound, monitoring vitals, praying the officer held on. And as the city streets blurred past, she knew her decision would ignite a fire far beyond that crumbling curb. A viral reckoning of trust, authority, and the right to care that no department could ever ignore. Back in the ER's trauma bay, Nurse Amara Okafor worked with laser focus as portable X-rays and ultrasound machines hummed around her. Officer Harris lay on a gurney at center stage, groggy but stable after her unsanctioned interventions. Dr. Liu barked orders to attach blood products, and a team of nurses and techs moved with urgent precision. Only then did Amara's anger surface. Her hands trembled as she peeled off her gloves. Moments earlier, on the street, she'd expected the sergeant to thank her, to at least apologize for the delay. Instead, he stood back, arms crossed, as if her very presence had been the transgression. As the trauma team closed in, Amara replayed their faces, the rookie officer's averted eyes, the sergeant's rigid posture, the chilling dispatch order to stand down. Her heart pounded with the realization that protocol and prejudice had nearly cost a man his life. After Harris was stabilized and whisked to surgery, Amara retreated to a quiet supply closet to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed with calls from distraught colleagues who'd witnessed the street-side standoff. One paramedic's message stung. "You shouldn't have done that, Amara. You could be fired." Another text arrived from Luis. "You saved his life. Don't let them silence you." Determined not to let this slide into another unspoken injustice, Amara opened the hospital's secure video feed on her tablet. With a single swipe, she isolated the body cam footage from Officer Harris's vest camera, recording every moment from the shot to her tourniquet, including the sergeant's cold refusal. She downloaded the clip, its 42 seconds capturing the raw collision of authority and care. Back home that night, Amara sat at her kitchen table, kitchen light cutting half her face away from the darkened room. She opened her personal social media account and uploaded the video, accompanied by a succinct caption. As a state-certified EMT and nurse, I was barred from treating a bleeding police officer by his own department's orders. I acted because I promised to save lives, no matter the uniform. Care before command. Within minutes, likes surged. Comments exploded. Thank you for doing what's right. This needs to go viral. Sign the petition to hold that sergeant accountable. Thousands of shares later, the clip reached local journalists. By dawn, Black Nurse Saves, Cop After Department Blocks Care, headlined every newsfeed. That morning, the governor's office issued a statement. We commend Nurse Okafor's bravery. We are launching an immediate review of police medical protocols. The police chief, under intense media pressure, promised an independent inquiry into the incident. Meanwhile, Amara sat for her first television interview, composed yet resolute as cameras tracked her every word. No policy should stand between a wounded human and the care they need. We cannot allow bias to override our oath. Her words resonated across the state. Within 48 hours, an online petition demanding nurse first responder access rights reached 150,000 signatures. City council members drafted emergency legislation mandating unconditional medical entry for credentialed responders. Local hospitals began installing override panels at every ambulance bay door, mirroring Amara's own street-side override. In the following week, the police department's internal affairs unit convened a public hearing. Amara testified under oath, her calm testimony matched by video evidence. The sergeant faced intense scrutiny as Amara described the moment she chose patient over protocol. He was bleeding. My duty is clear. When she finished, the gallery erupted in applause, a rare moment of unity across community and law enforcement stakeholders. By the time Officer Harris emerged from surgery, grateful and eager to thank his savior, the tide had fully turned. A joint press conference was held at Mercy General. The police chief announced a sweeping overhaul of medical access procedures, bias training for every officer, and a formal apology to Nurse Okafor. The same governor who'd once again appeared on camera hailed her as a hero who reminded us that caring transcends all barriers. That chapter closed with Amara Okafor standing on the hospital steps at dusk, no longer just a nurse treating the wounded, but a viral advocate whose courage had realigned an entire system. Behind her, the newly installed override panels on the ER doors gleamed like beacons, a promise that no first responder would ever again be forced to choose between their badge and their duty. Within days of the video's release, every conference room and precinct house in the 4th District buzzed with urgent memos and emergency meetings. Police Chief Donovan Marshall, whose unflinching loyalty to chain of command had cost an officer's life, found himself under relentless public scrutiny. At the station's headquarters, Marshall convened his command staff in the oak-paneled briefing room. Uniformed captains, lieutenants, and civilian administrators sat in tense silence as he cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, Marshall began, voice measured but grim, our department's reputation and our community's trust hang in the balance. We must address the incident involving Nurse Okafor and Officer Harris with transparency and speed. Effective immediately, I'm appointing an independent medical access review board to examine policies, procedures, and individual conduct. I will cooperate fully. Over the next 2 weeks, the review board gathered testimony from dozens of witnesses. Dispatchers who'd relayed the stand-down order, security guards who'd hovered outside the ER doors, and officers who'd watched without intervening. Each impaneled civilian member, representatives from the city's Bar Association, the local NAACP chapter, and the State Nursing Council, insisted on full access to duty logs, body cam footage, and dispatcher transcripts. Amara's recorded street-side defiance played on loop at every session, her calm hands replacing the department's frozen in action. Simultaneously, community leaders organized public forums in churches, schools, and city halls. In the North Side Auditorium, families of crime victims and retired law enforcement officers offered mixed testimony: gratitude for Amara's heroism, sorrow for the wounded trust in blue, and steely resolve that no one else should suffer such a betrayal of duty. One elderly pastor's voice quavered as he spoke. "We pray for our protectors, but they too must be protected from the poison of prejudice that can cost lives." Under mounting pressure, Chief Marshal publicly apologized during a televised press conference. "To Nurse Okafor, to Officer Harris, and to every citizen we swore to protect, I failed you. We will rewrite our policies, retrain our staff, and restore your faith in our mission." He introduced a three-pronged reform plan, mirroring Amara's own demands: immediate override panels at every precinct lock, department-wide bias interruption workshops led by civilian educators, and an online medical access accountability dashboard reporting compliance rates in real time. As the reforms rolled out, precinct commanders reported a surge of EMTs, nurses, and paramedics entering without delay, no longer blocked by misapplication of protocol. Workshops convened quarterly, pairing officers with veteran medical personnel in scenario-based drills, responding to GI bleeds, pediatric asthma attacks, and violent crime wounds with equal respect for life. Data analysts tracked every override event, every bias complaint, and every training attendance, posting metrics that hospital CEOs and city council members could scrutinize. By the end of the quarter, Internal Affairs closed its review. The sergeant who'd barred Amara from duty received a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining. Several dispatchers were reassigned after failure to act citations, and Officer Harris publicly credited Amara's interventions with saving his career and his leg. In the corridors of power, at City Hall, in the state capitol, and within the police union, Amara's viral care campaign was hailed not just as an act of individual heroism, but as the spark that had ignited a comprehensive overhaul. And as she returned to her nursing duties, the once locked ER doors stood wide, each override panel a testament to the patient-first ethos she refused to leave behind. 2 months after the Independent Medical Access Review Board published its recommendations, Nurse Amara Okafor stood in the cavernous training hall of the 4th Precinct's newly renovated Community Policing Center. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, each occupied by uniformed officers, civilian dispatchers, hospital security staff, and EMS providers. At the front, a large banner proclaimed First Responder Medical Access and Bias Interruption Workshop. Amara checked her notes one last time. Case studies drawn from her own street-side rescue, dispatcher transcripts showing the fatal delay, and the raw data from the Medical Access Accountability Dashboard, a color-coded map of precincts tracking override compliance. She straightened her white coat, the only nurse among the presenters, and stepped up to the podium to a ripple of applause. "Good morning, everyone," she began, voice steady despite the weight of expectation. "We're here because a single locked door nearly cost a life. Today, we ensure it never happens again." She launched into the immediate override protocol segment, demonstrating on a mock door panel how any credentialed first responder's badge swipe triggered a first priority unlock, an alert to both on-site security and hospital administration, and an automatic timestamp entry. A technician projected the dashboard live: green precincts with 100% compliance, yellow precincts still rolling out panels, and one stubborn red zone where engineers had delayed installation. Amara paused on that red district's name, 22nd Precinct. She met the eye of its commander in the front row. "We'll finish their panels today," she said. Commander Reyes nodded, lips tight, eyes determined. Next, she transitioned to the heart of the workshop: bias interruption scenarios. Lights dimmed as video vignettes played on the center's wide screen. A black paramedic kneeling beside a gunshot victim and being told to wait your turn. An Asian EMT prevented from entering an ICU bay. A female patrol medic overlooked while male counterparts were ushered inside. After each clip, Amara guided participants through debriefs, identifying micro-inequities. He hesitated at her badge. discussing the emotional impact on the caregiver, and practicing the stop-step support intervention, pausing the flow of action, stepping in to intervene, and supporting the responder to do their job. Lieutenant Jackson cleared her throat to role-play. "Officer sees EMT at the door," Jackson stated, voice firm. He hesitates. "What do you do?" An officer in the back stood and said, "I step forward, place my hand on his arm and say, 'Let her through. She's here to save a life.'" Applause broke out as Amara nodded. "Exactly. Intervention is not insubordination. It's our duty." By midday, the workshop shifted to dispatch-driven training. Dispatchers sat at rows of console simulators, each receiving mock calls, while supervisors injected delay scenarios. When a simulated stand-down order appeared, dispatchers practiced overriding it under the new policy, then logged the event in the accountability system. Amara circulated, offering feedback. "Remember, medical neutrality is absolute. Your badge directs them in." In the afternoon, hospital security chiefs partnered with Amara to discuss door hardware upgrades, anti-tamper overrides, backup power modules, and encrypted badge swipe systems to prevent local lockouts. Engineers sketched new layouts for ER corridors, ensuring every entry point had a visible override panel and clear signage stating, "First responders, access unconditional." As the workshop drew to a close, Amara unveiled a medical access pledge, a signed commitment by every attendee to uphold the new protocols and to intervene when comrades hesitated. Each officer and dispatcher approached the pledge banner, inscribing their name in bold marker: Officer Maria Santos, Dispatcher Long Nguyen, Chief Security Patel. When the final signature was laid by Commander Reyes, a round of applause filled the hall. Afterward, as Amara packed her materials, Dr. Liu, her ER director, approached, flanked by Mercy General's CEO and the hospital's security chief. "Amara," he said, voice warm, "thank you. This workshop is already saving lives. We're sending our entire staff through your training next month." Stepping into the cooling evening air, Amara felt the first real relief since that night on Elm Street. The locked doors and whispered biases that once barred her way were being dismantled, piece by policies ingrained in everyday practice. And as she watched officers walking back to their cars, some nodding respectfully, others offering thumbs up, she knew that institutional overhaul had finally taken hold, transforming reaction into routine, prejudice into prevention, and a single nurse's defiance into a department's collective commitment to care. 6 months after the first workshops, the Medical Access Accountability Dashboard had matured from a simple pilot into an indispensable oversight tool. Its sleek interface projected onto conference room walls at City Hall and logged in nightly dashboards across hospital, EMS, and police intranets. Nurse Amara Okafor entered the room where health commissioners, police auditors, and civic tech developers gathered around a curved video wall. Dozens of precincts glowed in shades of green, yellow, and red, each color reflecting override compliance rates and bias report volumes for the past quarter. Amara took the podium, remote in hand. This dashboard tells a clear story. Where access flourished, lives were saved. Where rollouts stalled, dangerous delays persisted. She clicked to a drill down on the 22nd precinct, once the stubborn red zone, now shifted to a cautious yellow. Detailed logs showed that 7 override failures had been logged in the first month, but only 1 in the most recent cycle, each followed by immediate corrective retraining. They didn't just install panels, Amar explained. They tracked every miss, held debriefs, and embedded the policy into daily routines. Next, she highlighted a cluster of green precincts that boasted 100% compliance and 0 bias complaints. Here, commanders had gone beyond mandate, hosting joint ride-along days where nurses shadowed patrol shifts and officers observed trauma calls, cementing the culture of mutual respect. Amara shared a video clip from Station 12's community patrol program, a paramedic and an officer high-fiving after clearing a peer's airway, then pausing to debrief the emotional impact for all present. solid proof that data paired with human connection amplified the reform's reach. Then came the yellow flags, facilities where override panels were installed, but dispatchers still hesitated under stress. Amara zoomed in on one hospital network, whose IT integration had inadvertently quarantined badge swipes behind legacy security software. Within that network, 5 override attempts had been logged as manual bypasses, triggering follow-up investigations. A security chief in the audience, tugging at her collar, confessed, "We thought having the panels was enough. We didn't anticipate the workflow friction in high-volume trauma bays." Amara nodded. That's why the dashboard pairs metrics with mandatory debriefs. Every override failure triggers a review within 24 hours, ensuring no root cause goes unaddressed. As the meeting wound down, the Civic Tech team demoed the dashboard's new Community Transparency Portal, a public web page where residents could view aggregate compliance by zip code, upcoming training schedules, and recent case studies. An elderly council member leaned over to Amara, voice soft. "My constituents can finally see that justice and care isn't just rhetoric. It's quantifiable action." Amara allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. On the drive home, the evening traffic glowed under streetlights as radio news recapped the dashboard's latest stats. Audience reaction clear in rising call-in volumes from citizens reporting personal stories of seamless access. Behind every data point lay countless lives spared delay. Cardiac arrests treated without door barring, overdose victims reached before irreversible hypoxia, and vulnerable children brought straight into pediatric ICUs. And at the heart of it all, pulsed the dashboard's unblinking record, a testament that when speed, equity, and accountability converge, every locked door becomes a relic of the past, forever replaced by open gates to care. The following spring, Amara Okafor stood in the airy atrium of St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, Mercy General's largest rival, where hospital administrators, county healthcare coalition leaders, and state legislators packed the space for her keynote on From Crisis to Culture, Scaling Medical Access Reforms. A banner behind her read, "No door locked, no life blocked." As she surveyed the room, a sea of white coats, suit jackets, and ID badges, Amara steeled herself for the next phase, taking the hard-won model statewide. She began with a retrospective. The night the ER doors stayed closed, the viral video that galvanized change, and the dashboard that held every system accountable. Then, shifting tone, she laid out the statewide First Responder Access Initiative, a 3-tiered plan transferring Mercy's and the 4th Precinct's reforms into a universal standard for every hospital, police precinct, and EMS squad across the region. Tier 1 mandated immediate override panel installs and bias interruption workshops. Tier 2 introduced interdepartmental, cross-sector care rounds, where nurses, paramedics, and officers convened monthly to debrief real-world calls. And Tier 3 required quarterly public reporting of medical access metrics in every community newsletter. Over the next 2 hours, technologists demonstrated mobile app interfaces, enabling rural EMS crews to initiate overrides from miles out. Education specialists outlined curricula for nursing and police academies, now embedding care before command principles. And legal advisors detailed the new state statute codifying first responder entry rights. Hospital CEOs nodded, scribbling notes. Sheriff's deputies whispered logistics. Rural clinic directors, once outside the urban reform bubble, saw a clear path to safeguarding their volunteers. In the days that followed, Amara crisscrossed the state on a speaking tour. Duluth's Community Health Center, the marshaled halls of the state capitol, and small-town firehouses that once had no policy on EMT access at all. At each stop, local champions stepped forward. A sheriff's league in Greenvale passed an emergency resolution mirroring Policy 117. The Northern Tribal Council invited Amara to train reservation medics and tribal police together, and the medical board held an extraordinary session to incorporate override and bias modules into continuing education requirements for every licensed nurse and paramedic. As summer neared, Amara returned to Mercy General. This time, not as the lone nurse storming the ER doors, but as the head of the newly formed Center for Emergency Care Equity, housed in the hospital's research wing. There, data scientists refined the accountability dashboard with AI-driven flagging of potential policy breaches, while social work teams developed support networks for first responders experiencing discrimination. Amara's office walls bore framed commendations from every county she'd visited, but the most prized display was a single patch, Cross-Sector Care Rounds Founding Member. One humid July evening, as the city skyline blazed under the setting sun, Amara walked through Mercy's ER, tapping the override panel with a gentle smile. Nearby, a rookie EMT practiced badge swipes, then beamed as the door clicked open. "Feels good, right?" she asked. The EMT nodded, heartened not just by the unlocked door, but by the promise it represented. That in every hospital, every precinct, every corner of care, no responder would face that cruel moment of being shut out. And as Amara watched the gurney roll smoothly inside, she knew her campaign had forged a new standard, one where courage, compassion, and accountability ensured every life was met with open arms. 5 years after Nurse Amara Okafor's viral stand, and nearly 4 years since the first override panel clanged open on her behalf, she found herself on the stage of the State Health and Safety Symposium, addressing an audience of more than 1,000. Flanked by the state surgeon general and the police commissioner, she surveyed the crowd. Hospital CEOs who'd once balked at change, now champions of equity. Police captains whose precincts led the state in medical access compliance, and young EMTs and nursing students who had grown up knowing they would never be turned away. Amara began by recounting the night Officer Harris lay bleeding curbside, the sergeant's terse "stand down," and her decision to act, but she moved quickly to the present. The statewide dashboard now tracked more than 120 participating hospitals and 95 precincts, each displaying compliance rates north of 98%. She described how rural volunteer squads in backcountry towns used mobile override apps to save overdose victims, how urban fire departments embedded bias interruption tablets in every rig, and how community paramedicine programs now partnered with local clinics to ensure medical neutrality beyond the ER. Then, she unveiled the final pillar of the initiative, the First Responder Memorial Wing at Mercy General's new Center for Care Equity. Within its glass walls stood interactive exhibits, mirrored panels playing testimonials of responders once denied aid, archival footage of the original streetside rescue, and digital kiosks where visitors could pledge their own care before command promises. At its heart, a bronze sculpture, a nurse's outstretched hand unlocking a heavy door. Each year, names of fallen first responders who embodied that spirit would be inscribed at the sculpture's base. As she concluded, Amara turned to the crowd, voice rising above the hushed reverence. "Doors that once slammed shut on care are now forever open. Our oath, to do no harm, is no longer a mere phrase, but a binding promise engraved in policy, practice, and the hearts of every first responder in our state. Let this legacy remind us that vigilance is not a moment, but a movement, and that as long as any life hangs in the balance, we must keep every door unlocked, every bias interrupted, and every promise kept." The auditorium rose in a standing ovation that reverberated like thunder. Among the applauding faces, Amara spotted former skeptics turned advocates, heads of security teams, dispatch directors, even the sergeant whose orders she'd defied. They joined in the recognition that her courage had redefined the relationship between care and command. Later, beneath the atrium's skylight, Amara walked alone past the new sculptures and exhibits, each reflection catching a fragment of her journey. Bulletin boards displayed photos of override installations across the state. Video loops showed round-the-clock emergency calls answered without delay. She pressed her palm to the cold bronze hand, a tangible reminder that one act of defiance could ripple outward into a system forever altered. As dusk settled over the city skyline, visible through the center's glass walls, Amara stepped outside into the cool evening. A lone EMT walked past, badge in hand, pausing at the panel to breeze through the door. Unlocked, unafraid, unfettered. In that simple moment, Amara knew her work had transcended a single policy or precinct. It had forged a culture where every uniform, every voice, and every life would be met first with care and never again turned away.